Entitled brother claimed our childhood home because I'm single, but he had no idea I already owned it. And his meltdown was priceless. I grew up in a pretty normal family. My parents were kind, hardworking people who always tried to do the right thing. My older brother Luke, though? Different story. Luke had this way of making everything about himself, like he was the center of the universe, and the rest of us were just extras in his movie. Growing up, he was the golden child. It didn't matter what he did. My parents would always find a way to excuse it. "Oh, that's just Luke being Luke," they'd say. Meanwhile, I had to follow all the rules, stay out of trouble, and basically fly under the radar. I didn't really care much when we were kids. He was older, louder, more charming. He got the attention while I kept my head down. But as we got older, his entitlement got worse. He started acting like the world owed him everything, especially when it came to family stuff. There was this one time when our grandfather passed away and left me an old watch. It wasn't valuable, but it was special to me. A couple of months later, Luke borrowed it without asking and wore it to some party. I didn't even find out until I saw it in a picture on someone's social media. When I confronted him, he just laughed and said, "Relax, it's not like you even wear it. What's the big deal?" Stuff like that happened all the time. Fast forward to adulthood, and nothing really changed. Luke stayed in town while I moved away for work. He used that as some weird badge of honor, like he was the dutiful son because he stuck around. Never mind that he wasn't doing anything to actually help my parents. He just liked having the moral high ground. He'd throw it in my face at family gatherings too. "Well, I'm the one who's here for mom and dad, not off chasing some corporate dream," he'd say, loud enough for everyone to hear. Never mind that I helped out financially when my parents needed it. Things really started spiraling earlier this year. My parents decided they wanted to sell the house and retire to Florida. It made sense. The house was too much work for them, and they wanted a simpler life. When they told us about it, I thought it was a done deal. They planned to sell the house, split the money between Luke and me, and move. Simple, right? Not with Luke involved. Luke went nuts. "You can't sell the house," he shouted during a family Zoom call. "This is our childhood home. You're just going to give it away to some stranger." He kept going, saying how unfair it was because he was single and needed the house more than me. "Danny doesn't even live here. What does he need it for? He's got some fancy job and his own place. I'm the one who's here. It makes sense for me to have it." The thing is, Luke wasn't helping maintain the house. He wasn't mowing the lawn or fixing anything. My parents were doing all of that while Luke lived nearby and barely lifted a finger. But because he stayed local, he thought the house was automatically his. My parents didn't push back too hard, which annoyed me, but I didn't say much at the time. What Luke didn't know was that I had already bought the house. Months earlier, when my parents first mentioned selling, I offered to buy it outright. I didn't want to live there, but I thought it'd be a good investment and a way to keep it in the family. My parents liked the idea. It was an easy, no-hassle solution. We didn't tell Luke because we didn't think it would matter as long as he got his share of the money. But as Luke kept pushing, it became clear that he thought he could just claim the house for himself. He even started moving in before my parents were fully packed. One weekend, I flew home to help my parents sort through their stuff, and when I walked into the house, it was chaos. Luke had brought over boxes of his own things and started rearranging furniture. "What the hell is going on?" I asked, looking around at the mess. Luke grinned like he'd just won the lottery. "I'm moving in." "Makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, you're not going to live here. You don't own this house," I said. "Not yet," he replied, completely unfazed. "But Mom and Dad get it. It makes the most sense for me to stay here." I glanced at my parents, hoping they'd shut him down, but they just looked uncomfortable. "We're still figuring things out," my mom said softly. Luke kept acting like the house was his. He'd show up whenever he felt like it, even if my parents weren't home. He brought over his friends, claiming he was getting a feel for the place. At one point, he threw a full-on party there without telling anyone. My parents came home the next morning to find beer cans and trash everywhere. "That's it," I said after hearing about the party. "We need to talk." I called a family meeting. Luke showed up, acting like he was doing us all a favor by gracing us with his presence. Before he could start in on his usual speech about why he deserved the house, I cut him off. "Let's get one thing straight," I said. "The house isn't yours. It's mine. I bought it months ago." Luke's smirk disappeared. "What are you talking about?" I bought the house from Mom and Dad. It's legally mine. You don't own it, and you don't get to decide what happens to it. For a second, he just stared at me. Then he started laughing, like I'd just told the world's funniest joke. You're kidding, right? There's no way Mom and Dad would sell it to you behind my back. I pulled out a copy of the sale agreement and handed it to him. Believe what you want, but the paperwork doesn't lie. He grabbed the papers, his face turning red as he skimmed through them. This is bullshit, he shouted. You went behind my back and screwed me over. I didn't go behind your back, I said. I made a fair offer and Mom and Dad agreed. That's it. This isn't fair, he yelled, turning to our parents. How could you do this to me? I'm your son. I've been here for you while Danny's been off doing God knows what. My dad finally spoke up, his voice calm but firm. Luke, you've done nothing but make this harder for everyone. Danny stepped up and made things easy for us. You've just been creating problems. Luke stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. But it didn't stop there. After the blow-up at the house, Luke went full-on unhinged. He started showing up uninvited to the house like it was still some kind of open negotiation. One day, I caught him going through the garage, rummaging through boxes of stuff my parents were still sorting. What the hell are you doing here, Luke? I asked, trying to keep my cool. Just grabbing some of my stuff, he said casually, like he wasn't trespassing. Your stuff? This is Mom and Dad's stuff. And now it's on my property. You don't live here. You're seriously kicking me out of my own house? He shot back, his tone dripping with mock disbelief. It's not your house, Luke. It's mine. Get out, or I'm calling the cops. He laughed like I'd just said the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard. But when I actually pulled out my phone, his expression changed. You're such an asshole, you know that? You're just trying to screw me over, because you've always been jealous of me. I didn't even bother responding. I stood there and watched as he stomped off, muttering to himself. That wasn't the end of it. A few weeks later, I got a call from a neighbor who said a realtor had been poking around the property, saying it was about to go on the market. At first, I thought they had the wrong house, but when I called the realtor, they confirmed that Luke had contacted them. He'd told them he was the owner and was looking to sell fast. I was livid. I called Luke immediately. What the hell is wrong with you? Don't start, he snapped. I was just getting things in motion. You're obviously not going to live there, so why not let me handle it? Luke, you don't own the house. You can't sell something you don't own. Do you realize how illegal that is? He acted like I was the crazy one. It's not a big deal. I was just testing the waters. Chill out. I hung up and called my lawyer. We sent Luke a formal cease and desist letter and made it clear that if he kept pulling this crap, we'd press charges. You'd think that would have been the wake-up call he needed, but no. A few days after the letter was sent, I got an alert from the security cameras I'd installed around the house. When I checked the footage, there was Luke standing in the driveway with a group of his friends. They were carrying cases of beer and acting like they were about to throw another party. I drove straight to the house. When I got there, they were already setting up in the backyard like they owned the place. What the hell do you think you're doing? I shouted as I got out of my car. Luke turned around, a beer in his hand and that smug grin on his face. Relax, Danny. We're just having a little get-together. This isn't your house, Luke, I said, my voice cold. You and your friends need to leave. Now. Oh, come on, he said, rolling his eyes. It's not like you're even using the place. Why do you care? I care because it's my property, and you're trespassing. Leave, or I'm calling the cops. When he didn't move, I didn't hesitate. I called the police right in front of him. Luke tried to act like it was no big deal, laughing and joking with his friends, but when the cops showed up, his mood changed real quick. I pressed charges this time. He spent the night in jail, and while it wasn't enough to fix everything, it sent a clear message. That incident finally got through to my parents. They started holding Luke accountable, which was something they should have done years ago. My dad told him in no uncertain terms that he was on his own from now on. No more bailing him out, no more making excuses. After that, Luke backed off mostly. He still made the occasional passive-aggressive comment at family events, but he stopped showing up at the house or pulling any more stunts. The house has since been rented out, and I've moved on. Luke and I don't talk much these days, and honestly, that's fine by me. Some people just don't change, and I'm done bending over backward to keep the peace. It's funny, though. For all of Luke's talk about being the one who deserved the house, He never lifted a finger to actually earn it. He just expected the world to hand it to him, like it always had before. Not this time. Not anymore.